For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God and the salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first, and also to the Greek.
May God bless you, and I hope this is a great day for you with Christ. Welcome to Today with Christ. I'm Don Smith here at the Radio Bible Hour with my friend Scott Ingram. And today, Scott, we're going to be continuing with an interview with Reverend Harold Ball, who was with us in our last program. Reverend Ball has spent his entire life as a pastor, a servant of Jesus Christ, and we wanted him to come in and just offer some words of wisdom and reflection about his life of service for Jesus Christ. And I think if you saw the program last week, you probably know that you're in for another treat today. And today, we're going to focus on the words of wisdom that he had for people who are aging, like me, who are in their 60s, 70s, or maybe even older, and are reflecting on their life with Christ and what their role is in serving Christ as an older Christian.
And you know, as a younger man, today's program is for you too. If nothing happens, you're going to grow older.
That's right.
You're going to face these things that are going to happen in your life. So take this advice, take this wisdom. As we spoke last time, this verse from Proverbs 19:20, hear counsel and receive instruction, that thou mayest be wise in thy latter end. Listen today, folks, whether you be young or whether you be old.
So without further comment, let's listen to this interview with Reverend Ball. Welcome to Today with Christ. I'm Don Smith, and with me today is a special guest, Reverend Harold Ball, who is a retired minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ, a Baptist preacher, and currently the interim pastor of Memorial Baptist Church here in Newport, Tennessee. And Brother Harold has become a friend over the last few months. I've been had the opportunity to visit in his church here in Newport and to hear him preach on several occasions. And after hearing him preach, I thought I really want to have him on the program to come and talk about what it means to be a minister of the gospel, his experience over a lifetime of pastoring, as well as what he sees going on in the church today and some of the developments there. And so we're going to talk about a variety of things today, including aging and what it means to be a Christian as we get older. And just want to start off with maybe tell us a little bit about your life and your life of service to Christ, how you started, how you were called to preach, and ended up in the ministry.
Okay. And I'm happy to be here. I grew up in Cock County. My mom and dad had 6 sons. I was the second one. Wow. We attended Ray's Chapel Baptist Church. Grew up there. I was saved, came to know the Lord there. Jerry and I were married there. I was called to preach and licensed to preach there in 1967.
Wow.
50 years ago this coming
How
fall.
How about that?
Yes,
Wow.
yes.
Wow.
And then was later ordained to preach the gospel there and went out to a little church up in Bad Harbor, Calvary Baptist Church. Spent 5 years pastoring there. Moved to Jefferson County, went to Carson Newman, and received a bachelor's degree and pastored Flat Gap Baptist Church there. Moved from there to seminary, Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary in Wake Forest, North Carolina. Received my Master of Divinity there and pastored a church there. Moved to Burlington, North Carolina, and spent 13 years in a church. And in 1994, moved to Franklin, North Carolina, became pastor of First Baptist Church of Franklin. Had a great time there. 2009, at the age of 65, I'm a part of that aging group. we retired and moved, as my wife said, home.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I spent about a year attending First Baptist Church, Danridge. I told somebody, and you can appreciate this, and Scott can appreciate this. I didn't open any doors or close any doors. I didn't turn on any lights or turn off any lights. And I didn't listen to any whining. So but the Lord gave us that time. Yes,
right?
yes. And in 2010, the folks from Memorial had started a new congregation, and they came and asked if I would come and help them for a brief period of time. That's what I'm still doing.
So 7 years later, you're still helping in that role. So.
Yes. But it's been a great journey. Great journey. So the ministry, as you know, and Scott knows as well, the ministry is very rewarding. Mm-hmm. Very rewarding. Very frustrating at times. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's never been easy to pastor a church. Mm-hmm. I've told people, young ministers through the years, if you're looking for something easy, try something else.
Right.
It's rewarding. It can be frustrating. It can be difficult, but I've had a great journey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I think about some of those great missionaries in the past that they inspire me when I get discouraged. Mm-hmm. McShane, when he ministered to the Indians in the North Massachusetts area for 20-something years, and then died of tuberculosis. Yeah. And saw one conversion. One
conversion.
And gave his whole life. Died, when he was a young man, relatively. And those kind of things where the small church pastor, or that pastor in that is performing a service to God, if they will stay faithful, they are just as important in God's work as the pastor of the biggest church in the largest city, where there's a lot more attention, a lot more happening. But God has a place of service for everyone, I think, that feels called to serve Him, right. And that is so important to recognize that when you get discouraged, we were thinking about Elijah yesterday. I was running on the treadmill and watching a sermon by a pastor on Elijah, and how after that great victory over the Baal prophets, he gets frightened and discouraged and goes and hides in a rock.
Depressed.
Right.
Yeah.
And to recognize that is part of the experience of being a Christian. I worry about the Christian that never has a negative experience. Everything is just wonderful, and it's all high fives and everything is great. If you're following Jesus Christ, says many are the afflictions of the righteous. We're going to have those times when we're going to suffer. One of the things that you and I are experiencing as we get older is that our bodies don't work as well as they used to. No. We have more pain, more joint aches, more physical things that we have to deal with. That's just part of the process as we get older. Yeah. And can you say a little bit about maybe, I know we have a lot of older Christians out there who have faithfully served the Lord, and now maybe they're dealing with illness or pain. They're dealing with loss. We start to go to a lot more funerals as we get older. And some people that are really close to us are getting promoted by the management and getting to move on. And sometimes old age can be lonely. It can be painful. It can be a time when some Christians I know feel that they're set aside. They're kind of on the shelf now.
Exactly, and that has happened. That has happened in a lot of instances. Yeah, where their way of doing things is no longer accepted, and so you just move it aside to move in the new, which is important. It happens to all of us, but my thing is, just because you can't do everything, you just don't do anything.
That's right. Yeah.
When I became 65 years old, I was pastoring, as I said, First Baptist Church, which was a fairly large congregation, had a pretty good sized staff, and but I was going day and night, every day, every night. Time off, what's that? Vacation.
That's right.
You can go somewhere, but you're probably going to come back.
That's right.
So I decided that the church needed somebody who was at that younger stage who could come in and continue the day and night, and I was going to slow down. I had no idea at the time that I would pastor again. I thought, well, I'll preach occasionally, and when there's opportunities and when I feel like it, and so on. But God led me to a congregation that's not nearly as demanding. The needs are there, and I try to do what I can to minister to the needs, but the expectation. Now, when they get a younger pastor, I think the expectations will increase. But they understand, and I understand. I cannot do everything that I used to do, but that does not mean that God cannot use me.
Absolutely.
People who are experienced, people who have studied and applied their lives, are of great value.
They are
to the church, and we're blessed, as you know, with some senior adults. Don't call them old people. Senior adults who are very gifted, and I've heard people say, well, there's just not much I can do. But if I could mention Fran Smith. Fran Smith.
That's my Aunt Fran, who ran the Radio Bible Hour for many years until she retired at the age of 80.
Well, she still hasn't quit.
That's right. Yeah,
so,
and she's still on our board. Still helps out. She's down here every week.
Yes,
and tremendous help.
And she reminds me.
She's now 92. I don't think she's
really. I didn't say that.
And still going strong.
But she reminds me, at least once a month or so, I pray for you every day.
Right.
Hey, what's more important than that? Nothing.
Right. That's right.
And there was a song out not too long ago that said, I can pray, you can pray. It doesn't matter how much strength we have or what we're dealing with. We can all call upon God, and the church needs desperately prayer warriors.
That's
right.
Vital
to the church and its future.
And one of the things that I've found too in teaching Sunday school class or speaking in churches and getting feedback is that there's people used to know basic doctrine, and the older church members still have an understanding of doctrine that is much richer than what most of the young people in the church have. And that is such an important role for these older people to teach, to share their knowledge, to mentor sometimes the younger people. Our culture, I think, and I don't know if you see it this way, but I think one of its great weaknesses is its orientation toward whatever is young is better, and whatever is new is automatically an improvement. And it has lost that connection Again, you were talking about the mobility in our society. Sometimes we've lost connection with our parents or those grandparents, and those people have experience. If they're godly people, they are a treasure in your life, and they should be valued.
Cling to that.
Hang on to them and listen to what they say. I go to my Aunt Fran when we have a problem at Radio Bible Hour, or when there's an issue or something comes up, and I'll have a question, and I'll call her or go see her and say, what do you think about this? And I cannot count the times that she has had helpful, useful, practical advice for me, which has solved problems here. And our culture right now is trying to make it without the people that have already gone down the road.
Exactly.
You know, it's like we decide to go on a hike without a compass or a map. We're just going to see how well we do.
See when you get back.
When there's someone who's been on that road and can warn us about the pitfalls, can give us advice about how to make that trip easier.
Yeah. And sometimes younger people don't want to hear. I've been there. I've done that. This is the correct way to do it. Some people are determined to fail, but senior adults have so much to offer, and as a church, we don't need to be casting them aside.
No,
we need to be putting them front and center.
Right.
And saying to them, teach us, help us, help these young Christians. Don't throw up your hands and say, well, I can't do what I used to do, you know, but I can still do what I can do. And
well, I think the church has to be delivered, especially the youth churches now, and have a style perhaps that's not comfortable for the older folks, and maybe that feels a little alien because it's not what we were used to or raised with. But we have a responsibility too, as older people, to stay connected in the church and maybe to reach out to those younger people. I got involved in running a few years ago, and as an old guy out there, I'm often the oldest person in the race, and I usually finish, if not last, pretty close to last. But I have an opportunity to connect with young people. It's mostly young people that are involved in that, or I see young people maybe 50 or 60 seems pretty young now. But I have a chance. I've got to do my part too. I can't just withdraw and expect them to come knocking on my door. I've got to be out there and willing to encourage and share. One of the things that I think is so important, especially for men, is to mentor other younger men. And younger men are really hungry for that, Pastor. They want to connect with some older man. Sometimes their fathers, maybe there's a disruption in that relationship, and they don't have an older person in their life, an older man who can encourage them. The older women have the same responsibility. Women are a little bit more connected, I think, to the older generation. But there's work to be done there.
And that's what Paul talks about, you know, as he's writing in Timothy. You older servants, you more mature servants, you who have been at it, help those who come after you.
That's right. Right. You've got a responsibility.
And we need to, as a church. As I said, I've seen so many instances where people have said, well, this won't work, this won't attract people, And church, in a lot of instances, has become about attracting people rather than making disciples.
Exactly.
So we're not out there just to attract people. Jesus said, "Go make disciples." He didn't say entertain people, make them feel good. He said, "Make disciples."
That's right.
And I think that's happened. That a lot of the practices that don't appeal to the masses has been discarded, and when that happens, the church loses a lot of its influence and power.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
But senior adults are so valuable. So
And they can do so much more sometimes than they think they can.
Well, they can. They can.
You
can always
really
pray.
help.
You can
That's right.
always pray.
Yeah, that's right. And as you're saying, there is nothing more important that we do.
Oh my!
I had a broken ankle a few years ago, back in 2013, and was laid up for about almost 2 weeks. I really could barely get around. It was bad. I had to have surgery on it, and I hadn't been incapacitated like that in my life. And I got out my phone, and I was looking through my Facebook list of friends, and I had about 500 friends, and I just felt inspired to go through and through that list of 500 people that I knew. Some I knew well, some I didn't know very well, but I wanted to pray for each and every one on that list, and I had the time to do it.
Yes.
And that was such a blessing to my heart. And I realized as I went through that list, Pastor, that I knew much more about each one of those people than I thought I did. I was aware of needs that they had. I was aware of, for many of them, of difficulties that they were facing. And I just spent time praying for those people.
Yes.
And if you'll do that, that's a blessing to you. Make a list. My Aunt Mary, she used to keep in her kitchen, she had a list of people there that she would write down, and she would get a photograph of them if she could. And she had this whole area in her kitchen that was covered with pictures and names of people that every time she looked at that, she said, I would pray for them.
Yeah.
And that's
awesome.
a powerful ministry.
Awesome.
Powerful ministry.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your sharing a little bit about your experience and your walk with Christ, and how this goes on, doesn't it?
Yes, it
I
does.
think as long as we have these
Yes, it
bodies,
does. Yes.
He's still working on us, still presenting us with
working
challenges.
on me. Yeah.
And after this time at Memorial comes to an end, and after how do you face that? I know many older people now are facing retirement. They're facing that time in which they've been doing something that's very familiar, and that time is coming to an end. And I know many people are frightened by that as they see that coming and that change coming.
I'm not frightened. I'm kind of looking forward to it. I have grandchildren in New Jersey and Texas. That's a pretty widespread thing.
Right.
I am anticipating having more time to go spend time with them and help them and be there for them. Neither sat as close to any of their grandparents, none of them, and so I'm anticipating life to become a little bit slower. As I said, Memorial they've been so gracious, and they haven't been overly demanding and have over expectations, but I have certain expectations,
right.
That I try to abide by, and so I'm going to preach until I die. I mean, it's who I am.
Well, and your preaching is a real blessing too.
Well, I hope so, and
that,
I hope to continue to do that until God decides, okay, you've been there long enough. We're going home. So you people say the best is yet to come. I don't know that that's the case. It's all been blessed and all been pretty. I've pastored some wonderful churches. Now I've heard some horror stories, but God has blessed me, and I've always been a part of a growing congregation and things moving and happening. So I don't know that the best is yet to come, but it's good. Whatever God does is good.
Right. Yeah.
And I just
and that's
anticipate.
the kind of statement that you can make with credibility, that a young person really can't make with credibility because
right.
they don't know that yet.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Yeah.
But after you've been on this earth for a few years, you start to
72.
see God's hand, God's hand working across time.
Right.
And sometimes God works very slowly,
Yes.
and His
Yes, He
time
does.
is not our time.
Right.
And when you can live for 70 plus years and you can look back and say, He is good.
Yes.
And what He has done in my life is good.
Right.
It is wonderful, and I trust Him. That's one of the things that you can so encourage the younger people with, that you've been there, I've walked this path. Don't lose faith. Don't be frightened. Just walk ahead
Exactly.
and put your hand in His and just keep on going. And when you get to be our age, you can turn around and say,
it's been worth it.
It's been
There's
worth
a line in a song that I love, and I don't know that I had ever heard it put like this. I can trust you for tomorrow, for you were faithful yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
God never changes.
That's right.
He never changes.
That's right.
And all through my life, there's not been one time that God disappointed me or let me down.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I wish I could say I never disappointed Him or let Him down, and I could, I guess, but I wouldn't be speaking the truth. So,
Right. Yeah.
God's never disappointed me. He's never let me down. We've had some heart-to-heart conversations at times, but he's always done what He said He would do. He's not going to quit that. So, whatever life brings to me out there, God's going to continue to bless and use me. I don't, as I said, I don't anticipate quitting preaching. I don't know that I could if I wanted to.
Good.
You know, as I said, God called me.
That's right.
And He didn't say,
That's
okay, I want you to preach for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. I just felt like, well, God called me to preach, and that's what He wants me to do.
That's
so
right. He'll find
trying to
a
do
way
that.
to use you.
Yeah.
And if your heart is willing, if you're willing to serve, He'll find
absolutely.
the work that He has for you to do.
Yeah. Just don't have to be quite as busy as I am now.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for coming in and taking the time to share with us, and maybe we can have you come back if you don't mind, and we can talk a little bit more about some issues of doctrine and a few of those things that you've seen that you feel are really, really important over the years. But just want to thank you for being with us on
Don.
Today with
God
Christ
bless
today.
you.
God bless you.
Thank you
too.
so much.
Thank you.